Love at first sight is recognition. Carl Jung observed that what feels like an instant knowing between two strangers is rarely about the stranger at all. Here is the premise, stated plainly, and then we will open it together. Jung wrote in his essay on the psychology of the transference, published in the Collected Works Volume 16, that in each of us there is another whom we do not know, a companion self who watches from behind the eyes and colors what we see before we have even decided to look. This line comes from Volume 10 of his collected writings, and Jung would stop you right there and say, "Do you see it? The stranger across the room did not create the lightning you felt. The lightning was already coiled inside you, waiting for a face to wear. So when you say, 'I knew her the moment I saw her,' or 'I recognized him instantly,' you are more correct than you understand. You did recognize something, only it was not primarily him or her. It was a shape that has lived in your own psyche since before you could speak, and that shape simply found, for one charged moment, a body to stand in." So let me say where I am. Honestly, before we go further, I think of the person I fell for too fast, the one I was certain about within an hour, the one I later could not explain even to myself. And I say, I did not see clearly then. I see more clearly now. I make the unconscious conscious. Say it with me. I did not see clearly then. I see more clearly now. I make the unconscious conscious. Again, I did not see clearly then. I see more clearly now. I make the unconscious conscious. And if this teaching finds you tonight, I would love for it to find you again tomorrow. So consider staying close by subscribing, quietly, no fanfare needed. Before we go further, if something in what I just said made you go still, type the 2 words "face it" in the comments. Just those 2 words. Let it be a small, honest marker that you are willing to look. The first key is that the flash of recognition is not proof of destiny, it is proof of a mechanism. Inside every man, Jung taught, there lives an inner feminine figure he called the Anima, and inside every woman, an inner masculine figure he called the Animus. These are not literal little people. They are what Jung named the contrasexual image, an inner picture built from a lifetime of impressions, the mother's voice, a sister's laugh, the shape of tenderness or strength, first encountered in childhood. And this image does not sit quietly. It wants a face, it wants a body, it wants to be lived. So when someone walks into a room, and something in their bearing, their eyes, even the timbre of their voice happens to rhyme with that inner image, the unconscious does something swift and almost violent. It throws the image outward and calls it love. This is not a flaw in you. It is how the human psyche has always worked. But it means the certainty you feel in the first minute is not knowledge of the other person. It is a meeting with your own depths wearing a borrowed face. Think of it this way. Picture an ordinary Tuesday, a woman waiting for a late train, half asleep on her feet, and a stranger sits down 2 benches over and laughs at something on his phone. And something in her simply turns toward him, not because of what he said, she never even heard it, but because the shape of his laugh, the angle of his shoulders, some small unnamed thing lands in her like a key finding an old lock. She will tell her sister that night that she felt something she cannot explain, and she is right that she felt it, and wrong only about where it came from, because nothing about that stranger has been tested yet. Not his patience, not his temper, not what he is like at the end of a hard week. All she has met so far is a resemblance. And resemblance is not the same as knowing. This happens constantly and quietly, in elevators, in waiting rooms, across a crowded gathering. The eye catches a shape before the mind has gathered a single fact, and the heart, being older and less patient than the mind, moves first. Imagine a man who meets a woman at a gathering, and within the hour tells his friend he has never felt so understood by anyone. He has not spent enough time with her to be understood by her at all. What he has met is the internal woman who has been waiting inside him his whole life, finally given a place to stand. This does not make the feeling false. It makes it something other than what he thinks it is. And once you can name that difference, the whole experience of falling changes shape. It becomes less like fate arriving and more like a door swinging open onto a room you already owned. A room you built years ago out of longing and memory and every face that ever taught you what tenderness or strength should look like. And the stranger did not build that room. They only happened to stand in its doorway at the right hour. I call the image what it is, and not yet the person. The second key is that this inner image does not stay quietly inside. It gets thrown. Jung wrote plainly on this point, in his essay on the psychology of the transference, that the image is unconsciously projected upon the person of the beloved, and this, he said, is one of the main reasons for passionate attraction, or aversion. Notice he includes aversion in the same breath as attraction, because the same mechanism that makes you fall instantly can make you recoil instantly. Both are projection. Both are the psyche throwing its own contents outward and mistaking the screen for the source. Think of it like a film projector in a dark room. The projector holds the image, the picture is sharp, full of color, full of feeling, but if you walk up to the wall where the picture is showing, you find nothing there but blank plaster. The picture was never in the wall, it was in the projector all along. This is exactly what happens in that instant of falling. The other person becomes a wall, blank enough, receptive enough, and onto that wall you throw years of longing, and the qualities you swear you see in them with total certainty, the softness, the strength, the way they seem to understand you without words. Some of that may be real in them, but the certainty itself, the instant total knowing, that belongs to the projector, not the wall. And here is the part most people miss. The wall does not need to do anything to earn the picture. It only needs to be still enough and quiet enough for the beam to land. This is why a stranger on a train, someone you will never speak to again, can seem for one long moment to hold your entire fate in their face. They did nothing. They simply happened to stand in the path of the light. Imagine a woman scrolling through a dating app late at night. She pauses on one photograph, something in the eyes, the tilt of the head, and within seconds, she has decided this one is different. She has built, in the space of a single breath, a small imagined history, imagined tenderness, an imagined future kitchen, where they argue gently about coffee, none of it drawn from anything he has actually said or done, all of it drawn from her own projector, running quietly in the dark of her own mind. And the danger is not that this happens. It happens to nearly everyone with a pulse. The danger is believing the wall is glowing on its own, and then feeling betrayed later, when the actual man turns out to have opinions, and moods, and a life that was never shaped to fit the picture. Imagine, too, the same mechanism working in reverse. Someone meets a person and feels an instant, disproportionate dislike, a curl of the lip, a way of laughing, and cannot say why it grates so sharply. That too is often projection, only this time the beam carries something disowned rather than something longed for, and the tragedy, if we can call it that gently, is not that projection happens. Projection happens to everyone. The trouble comes when we refuse to notice it happening, when we insist the wall itself is glowing, or insist the wall itself is at fault. Rather than asking what is actually inside the projector, I withdraw the light and look at what is truly there. The third key is that the glow you feel, that sense of the whole world suddenly humming with meaning, comes from somewhere older than the relationship itself. Jung taught that this inner figure, the anima in a man, carries an intensity he called the archetype of life itself. When it is stirred, ordinary color deepens, music sounds different, the city outside your window looks, for a week or two, like a place worth living in. This is not decoration. It is the unconscious flooding the conscious mind with vitality, and it happens to feel like it is coming from the other person because they are standing so close to the source when it opens. Notice what this means. The glow is not a message about the quality of the other person. It is a message about how much of your own aliveness has been sitting dormant, waiting for permission to rise. This is why the feeling can be so disproportionate to how well you actually know someone. You are not responding only to them. You are responding to a door swinging open inside your own chest, and doors that have been shut a long time swing open loudly. Jung recalled in Memories, Dreams, Reflections a period in his own life when an inner voice, one he came to recognize as belonging to this same feminine figure within him, kept insisting to him that what he was doing, his strange inward explorations, was art, and he had to learn, deliberately, patiently, to answer that voice back, to say, no, this is not art, this is something else, something more like nature finding its own way. He had to separate the voice from himself in order to hear it honestly. And I tell you this story because the same discipline applies here. The glow whispers to you that this feeling is proof of destiny, proof that this person was written for you, and you must learn, the way Jung learned, to answer back gently, to say, I feel this deeply, and I do not yet know what it is telling me about the other person, versus what it is telling me about myself. Think for a moment of an ordinary evening. Someone comes home from a first date and cannot sleep. They lie awake replaying a laugh, a way of tilting the head, and they say to themselves, I have never felt this alive. And that sentence is more honest than they know, because the aliveness is real. It is simply misattributed. It feels like it was given to them by the other person, when in truth it was unlocked by the encounter, but generated within. Imagine a woman standing at her kitchen window 3 days after meeting someone, watching ordinary rain fall and finding it beautiful in a way rain has not been beautiful to her in years. She credits him entirely. She does not yet see that some quiet, neglected part of her own capacity for wonder simply found an opening and walked through it. Let me walk you through how this actually plays out across a single ordinary week, because it is rarely as sudden as we remember it. On the Monday you meet them and something catches. By Wednesday, you are replaying 3 sentences they said, as though they contained a hidden message meant only for you. By Friday, you have imagined a future with startling detail, though you have shared perhaps 4 conversations. By the following Tuesday, a small thing goes wrong, they cancel plans, they seem distracted, and the entire glow flickers. Not because they have changed, but because the image projected onto them has been jostled, and for a moment you see, with a flash of vertigo, that you do not actually know this person very well at all. This is not a sign the connection was fake. It is the projection meeting its first friction. And friction, uncomfortable as it is where real seeing begins. The glow was never a lie. It was simply misfiled, filed under them, when part of its address was always within you. And here is the quieter, harder truth beneath all of this. If you do not learn to claim some of that vitality as your own, you will spend a lifetime chasing it, from person to person, mistaking each new spark for a new fate, when it was the same inner fire, finding new kindling each time. I let the glow teach me about myself before I let it decide my future. The 4th key is that the truest sign you are inside a projection is not the feeling itself but its proportion. Ask yourself plainly, how much do I actually know, against how certain do I feel? When a small amount of contact produces a large amount of conviction, that gap, that disproportion, is the signal, not a signal that something is wrong, but a signal that something unconscious has entered the room. Picture 2 scales side by side. On one side sits the actual weight of what you have witnessed, a handful of conversations, a few shared meals, the way they laughed once at something small, and on the other side sits the weight of your certainty. And in the early days of falling, that second side is almost always heavier, tipped hard toward conviction, long before the first side has had time to fill with anything real. This is the imbalance Jung would have you notice, not to shame the heart for tipping early. Hearts have always tipped early, but to name honestly which side is doing the lifting. Imagine someone on a second date, already certain they have found the person they will grow old with. They cannot say much yet about how this person handles grief, or boredom, or a Sunday morning when nothing is scheduled and the ordinary self has nowhere to hide. They do not yet know how this person behaves when they are tired, or overlooked, or asked to apologize. And yet the certainty is total, complete, requiring no further evidence. This is worth noticing without shaming yourself for it, because everyone alive has felt this gap at least once. I certainly have. And so consider a second scene. Further along, a woman texts a friend after only 3 days that she has never felt so seen in her life, and her friend, gently, asks what she means by seen, and she struggles to answer with anything but a feeling. This is not deceit. It is simply the projector running ahead of the projector's evidence. The useful move here is not to distrust every strong feeling the moment it arrives. That would only trade one extreme for another. The useful move is to ask the feeling a direct question. What in me is so hungry for this to be true? What image have I been carrying, quietly, for years, that this particular person happens to resemble? Sometimes the resemblance is honest, built from something real in them that will hold weight later, and the relationship survives the weighing. Sometimes the resemblance is only surface, a trick of light, and the whole thing dissolves once real days accumulate and the scale is finally allowed to fill. Either way, you find out only by watching the proportion between knowledge and conviction over time, and adjusting your trust accordingly, not by dampening your heart, not by refusing the lightning when it comes, but by keeping one eye open while it beats, letting the days themselves add their slow, honest weight to the empty side of the scale. I let time, not intensity, be my measure of what is real. I would love to keep walking through this with you week after week. So if this is helping, let the subscribe button be a small yes to more of it. That way tomorrow's teaching has a way of finding you, quietly, without either of us having to chase it down. The fifth key is the deepest one, and I want to walk it in 4 pieces because it will not fit in a single breath. First, consider what Jung called the syzygy, an old word for a pairing, a yoking together. He used it to describe the inner marriage between the conscious personality and its unconscious opposite, the man's ego and his anima, the woman's ego and her animus, and he taught that we are drawn, again and again, to seek this pairing outside ourselves before we have done the harder work of finding it within. This is why so many people fall for a strikingly similar type of person, again and again, different faces, same wound, same warmth, same silence at the same moment. Imagine a woman who calls her closest friend after a third failed relationship and says, with genuine bewilderment, "How do I keep finding the same man? He has a different job every time, a different city, even a different face, but somewhere in the 3rd week, the exact same coldness always arrives, right on schedule." This is not bad luck, and it is not fate testing her. This is the syzygy, insisting on being noticed, the inner pairing repeating its pattern outward because it has not yet been recognized inward, and until it is recognized, it will keep casting the same shape onto new strangers, hoping one of them will finally complete what only inner work can complete. Notice too that this repetition is rarely announced loudly. It arrives disguised as a new beginning each time, a fresh face, a fresh city, a fresh sense that this one will surely be different, and so the pattern hides in plain sight. Mistaken for a string of bad luck, instead of a single unfinished conversation the psyche keeps trying to have with itself. Second, consider the shape of the glow and its fading. Because this cycle is so common, it deserves its own honest naming. At the start, the other person seems to answer something in you that nothing else ever has. This is the anima, or animus, doing its most theatrical work, painting the beloved in the colors of your own unlived depths. But no human being can carry that weight forever. No one can be, permanently, the walking embodiment of another person's inner world. So the glow fades, sometimes slowly, sometimes all at once. And it rarely fades over something large. It fades over small things. A dish left in the sink, a phone checked during dinner, a joke that lands flat instead of perfectly, and each small friction chips a little more paint off the projection, until, one ordinary Tuesday evening, you look across the table and see, for the first time, an actual person, tired, imperfect, distracted, nothing like the glowing figure who first appeared. This fading is often mistaken for the death of love, when it may in fact be love's actual beginning. Because what fades is the projection, not necessarily the person, and what remains, once the projection lifts, is the chance to see someone plainly, flaws first, ordinariness first, and to choose them, or not, with open eyes rather than borrowed light. Consider a second, quieter scene, a man who has worked beside the same colleague for years, and one ordinary afternoon, filing papers, Sharing a tired joke about the copier, he feels something shift, a warmth he had not noticed before, and he wonders how he missed it for so long. The truth is, he did not miss anything. The image inside him simply found, on that particular afternoon, a small opening it had been waiting for, and it rushed to fill it. The colleague did nothing differently. The light came from within him and landed, as it always does, on whatever face happened to be nearest when the door swung open. Third, I will pause here and ask you directly, because this key is about you now, not about people in general. Think of someone you fell for quickly, and ask honestly, what did I expect them to be? Before I truly knew them, what quality did I assign to them in the first week that took months, or years, to actually confirm or disprove? Was it strength? Was it gentleness? Was it a kind of attention no one had given you before? Sit with that for a moment. Do not rush past it, because this is where the real teaching lives, not in the story of someone else's romance, but in the quiet audit of your own. And if you cannot yet name the quality, try instead to name the ache it was answering. An old hunger to be noticed, an old fear of being left, an old hope that someone, somewhere, would finally stay. The image always attaches itself first to a wound before it attaches itself to a wish. Fourth, consider what Jung meant when he wrote that the anima is the archetype of life itself. He was pointing to something larger than romance. He meant that this inner figure is our very connection to aliveness, to feeling, to meaning. And when we only ever meet it by projecting it onto lovers, we outsource our own vitality to another person. We make them responsible for a feeling that is actually our own inheritance. Imagine a man who notices that he only feels truly alive on the evenings his partner texts back quickly, and strangely flat on the evenings she does not. The music sounds the same, the walk home is the same, but something in him has quietly handed over the switch that turns his own aliveness on and off. This is why breakups can feel like the world itself has gone grey. It is not only the person who is gone, it is the temporary loss of access to a part of your own depth that you had, without realizing it, handed over. The healing is not to stop falling in love. Jung never taught that. The healing is to slowly, patiently, take back a portion of that projection and let it live inside your own conscious life, so that your sense of vitality does not depend entirely on being chosen. This might mean returning to some solitary practice you abandoned the moment romance arrived, a craft, an instrument, a long walk taken for its own sake, not because it replaces love, but because it proves to your own psyche that the light was never only theirs to give. Here is a simple practice, not a therapy, just an honest inventory. Take a name, someone you fell for quickly, in the past or the present, and write 2 short lists. On one side, write what you actually know to be true of them, verified across time. On the other side, write what you assume to be true within the first weeks, purely from feeling. Look at the second list slowly, and ask, where did I learn to expect this? Whose face? Whose absence? Whose old ache does this resemble? You may find the animus or anima you have been chasing has your father's silence in it, or your mother's warmth, or the shape of something you needed at 7 years old and never quite received. This is not a failure, it is simply where the current of your desire was carved, and once you see the riverbed, you are no longer swept along by the water without knowing why. And here is the last quiet turn of this key. Once you begin reclaiming even a small portion of that light for yourself, something curious happens. The people you meet stop feeling like verdicts on your worth and start feeling like companions in an ordinary life. The lightning does not disappear entirely, it simply stops being the only evidence you trust. I take back the light I lent, so I can finally see who is standing there. The 6th key, and the gentlest one, is that disillusionment is not the end of love, it is where love actually starts. The word itself tells you this. Disillusion, the loss of illusion. And Jung was never interested in helping people avoid this loss. He was interested in helping them survive it well, because on the other side of the fading glow is something less dazzling, but far more durable. 2 actual people, seen without the paint of projection, choosing each other anyway. This is not the language of twin flames or cosmic contracts. Jung never spoke that way. He spoke of ordinary humans doing extraordinary inner work, learning to withdraw their own unlived depths from someone else's shoulders and carry that weight themselves, so that what remains between two people is not a performance of destiny, but a real, slower, more honest attachment. Let me give you an ordinary picture of what this looks like. Imagine a couple 10 years into a marriage, standing at a sink after dinner, one washing, one drying, saying almost nothing. From the outside, it looks like nothing at all. No lightning, no music swelling, no sense that the whole world has rearranged itself around a single face. And if you had shown this scene to either of them in the first month of falling in love, they might have mistaken it for the death of what they had. But it is not death. It is what remains once the borrowed light has been returned to its rightful owner. It is two people who have stopped asking each other to be the source of their own aliveness and started simply being present to one another instead. Consider it from another angle. Think of the same couple years earlier, in the exact season when the glow was thinning, one of them noticing, with a small ache, that the other now looked tired instead of luminous, ordinary instead of fated, and mistaking that ache for proof the love had been a mistake, when really the ache was only the sound of a projection setting down its weight. This is the moment so many people flee, not because the love has failed, but because the easy magic has, and fleeing here only sends them looking for the next doorway, the next flash, the next stranger willing to carry the light for a while. Staying, on the other hand, asks something harder and quieter. It asks you to keep choosing a face you can now see plainly, without the paint, and to find that you still want to. This is a quieter thing than the first spark, but it asks more of you, not less, because it requires you to keep showing up for someone real, faults and habits and small failures of patience and all, rather than for someone dressed in the glow of your own hidden longing. The glow was never wasted. It was the doorway. But no one can live permanently in a doorway. Eventually, you either walk through into the rooms of an actual life together, dishes and illness and boredom, and small forgiveness after small forgiveness, or you go looking for another doorway, another flash, another stranger to carry the light for a while. Love at first sight, then, is not false, it is simply early, a rumor of something that has not yet been earned by time, and the work of a real relationship begins the moment you walk through that door and start furnishing the rooms with actual knowledge instead of borrowed light. I let the first glow be a beginning, not a verdict. Here is the whole picture. The flash of recognition is the psyche meeting itself in a stranger's face. The certainty you feel is projection, not proof. The glow you feel belongs first to your own depths before it belongs to them. The disproportion between what you know and how certain you feel is the signal worth trusting. The syzygy inside you will keep repeating the same pattern outward until you meet it honestly within. And disillusionment, far from ending the story, is where the real one quietly begins. Every one of these was never 6 separate lessons. They were 6 turns of the same single key. The key that says, look first at what you brought into the room before you decide what you found there. I did not see clearly then. I see more clearly now. I make the unconscious conscious. Say it with me. I did not see clearly then. I see more clearly now. I make the unconscious conscious. Again, I did not see clearly then. I see more clearly now. I make the unconscious conscious. So the next time recognition arrives like lightning, and it will, I hope you ask it gently, before you ask anything of the person standing in its light. What in me have I been waiting, all this time, to see?